Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast chat. And today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about pairing multi-joint exercises for synergy. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that single joint exercises are bad or you should never do them. I, however, tend to promote that the overwhelming majority of your training should be big multi-joint exercises. And notice I don't ever say compound or isolation because those words are ridiculous. They're not based on reality, not based on how the body works. It should be called multi-joint and single joint. Now, I don't have a problem with people using a limited amount of single joint exercises for a weak point. It has its place for weak point training. However, if you're doing more than about 2 single joint movements in a single workout, your training is inefficient, probably poorly written, and you're just not going to get as big and as strong as possible. And if anything, you're going to tend to get more overuse issues from doing this. So I tend to recommend, from a training economy perspective, picking multi-joint exercises. But the problem that we run into is that while a lot of these movements aid a lot of muscle, that muscle isn't always proportionate through the entire movement, right? Not always proportionate. And it may not fully work the muscle as much as you want. And what's something I've said in the past on this? The evidence shows that the best exercise to do for a muscle is to do at least 2 different exercises for a muscle. Okay? There is no one perfect exercise that by itself is the best way to maximally develop a muscle. That's just not reality. Almost every exercise has a compromise somewhere in ahead of a muscle or its strength curve. Almost all of them. You can find some very rare exceptions, and sometimes those very rare exceptions oftentimes are hard on tendons and things. So again, there's always a trade-off. So the point is that when we work a muscle from a couple different angles, the bulk of the research shows that it has more potential for muscle growth. And so what I recommend is thinking through when we are pairing together and you're deciding what movements to do, putting a little thought into how you combine them and how they work the muscles can be of great benefit, particularly when we're dealing with our multi-joint movements. Now, keeping in mind, if we do this with several multi-joint movements, we're going to tend to get a lot of carryover through the whole body. We're going to be able to get bigger and thicker and stronger much, much quicker. So what do I mean by examples? Okay, let's take chest presses, for example. We could do a barbell bench press. Now, people could argue, you only see goofy bodybuilders make this argument, oh, the bench press isn't a great chest exercise, but then you have experts with degrees in the field who are themselves bodybuilders who disagree. I've seen Dr. Mike disagree. I've seen Jeff Nipper disagree and say, actually, the barbell bench press is one of the best chest exercises. Not saying other stuff can't be just as good, but it's up there. But we're just doing one movement. So how about you combine that with another movement to build more chest? I don't know, you can combine it with an incline bench. Slightly more emphasis on the upper chest. You get a little more delt involved, right? A little more delt involved, a little less tricep. But if you're chasing overall chest development, that is a pretty good combination because we're working 2 very different angles of the muscle. We're seeing a synergistic effect, right? Because we're going to work the muscle in a different way, and certain heads of the muscle are going to get emphasized more than others. And this will, again, build a larger, more complete muscle. And I want people to understand, even when you start thinking in terms of lower, middle, and upper chest, both of these movements work the entire chest. So anyone who's saying, oh, yeah, they don't, the bench only works the middle or lower chest, and the incline only works the upper chest. Well, that's not true. They both can build the entire chest. However, the emphasis is different. Combining them together gives us a larger overall training response versus if we just did a single exercise for the same amount of sets and volume. All right? There's a benefit here. You can combine it with, a decline dumbbell press. You'll never see me recommend a barbell dumbbell bench. I'm not going to get into that. It's just not that good of a movement, irrespective of what people tell you. But you can combine it with a dumbbell. You can get a deeper range of motion. You can combine it with a weighted chest dip with your bench press. That would be a great combination. Different emphasis, different angle of the chest. All of these are big movements that hit different muscles also. The only thing to remember is that when you go to those decline angles, we get less front delt. And if you're trying to build front delts also, the incline would be a better choice. What else could we look at? How about triceps? Right, how about triceps? Closed grip bench press, great tricep exercise. It's a great shoulder exercise too, front delts. Closed grip bench works the middle and lower chest less than a flat bench. It still works them, but it's quite a bit less. It's significantly less. Does hit the upper chest a little harder. Hits the front delts quite well, and it hits the triceps harder than a flat bench. All right, now you could of course combine that with a bench press, and we would have a good combination again, wouldn't we? You could do the same thing. Instead of the incline, you could throw in closed grip benching with your flat bench. But let's say triceps. Well, the thing that we get is that we don't always get the best stretch that we might want at the bottom of it. It tends to work through the lockout portion. It works the triceps amazingly well. And I'm not saying it doesn't work the triceps at the bottom. It does, not as much as some other exercises. All right. How about if we combine it with a dip? I mean, you can combine it with a single joint movement and get great tricep development too. But if we're trying to stick with multi-joint stuff, how about a dip? That would be a great combination. Why? Dip puts a deeper stretch. Now, for some of us, like for me, I struggle to even knock out on a dip. My joints don't like it. And it doesn't even seem to load the tricep as much up there for me personally. Not the same way the closed grip bench does, but that bottom portion, I get a deep stretch, and most people do. You get a deeper stretch on the tricep. Again, your emphasis is slightly different in the strength curve. Also, think in terms of the other synergy. Weighted dip hits the lower chest very hard. Area the closed grip bench doesn't hit as much. While they're both great tricep movements, we're also getting a combination effect for the chest. Right, this creates a good synergy between two exercises, right? Because a couple different muscles are now being worked at different angles that one could make up for the shortcomings of the other to combine together to create better overall development. Right, it's a good combination, and this is what I mean by combining. How about we start thinking in terms of middle back and upper back? How about a barbell row? And I mean, it can even be the goofy, cheap bodybuilder rows they do, which hits upper back even more. It could be a stricter Pendlay type row like I do in program with a weighted pull-up. That's a great combination. Why? Because we get a more overall balance. We get more overall balance. We get a lot more mid and upper trap. Right? A lot more posterior deltoid on any form of row versus any form of pull-down movement or pull-up. Again, combine that with the pull-up, which, again, a fantastic overall developer for the upper body, and it'll create better balance through the back. In fact, you really need to balance rowing with pull-ups, chin-ups, things like that, just for overall shoulder health. Because, again, if your upper back is weak, again, especially if you do a lot of pressing, it can create some imbalances that can lead to shoulder injuries. But in terms of overall development, this combination works together really well. Really, really well. Because it's not just looking at something like the chest where we're like, oh, the different parts of the chest. We're looking at different muscles of the anatomy of the back, and there's a very different emphasis. They both work the lats quite well. Pull up arguably better. Right? Pull-up works the biceps and arms better too. Again, and including the triceps. Again, coming back over to filling in some of those niches, it works though the long head of the tricep actually decently well. I get a tricep pump when I do pull-ups personally. Combine it back in with those other exercises for the triceps. Again, we create a synergy. But it doesn't work the upper back. It works the lower traps very. It's a great exercise for the lower traps, and especially the lower half of the latissimus dorsi. Right? But the rows will work the back above that more effectively, while still working all the same muscles. Just the emphasis in those muscles is dramatically different. This creates a fantastic combination effect. Do the same thing with something I've been doing lately, deep box squats, right, well below parallel on a box squat, combined with a deficit deadlift. That combination will build almost all of the muscles of the lower body very effectively. Again, it creates balance. Creates balance there. One of them hits the hamstrings extremely hard while still working the quads, although it's mostly the lockout half of the quads. The deep box squat puts you into that deep stretch for the quads. Still works the hamstrings as an important stabilizer, particularly on the eccentric. Tends to work the adductors and everything well, because again, we're assuming a wider stance. Works the hips a little more effectively, but we get a little more hip involvement with that deep deficit deadlift also, right? And by deep, I mean at least 2 inches or potentially more. I do 2.5 right now. They both work the glutes extremely hard. Right? Again, another combination like this for the lower body. This is what I mean by looking at synergy between your lifts. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.